Ms. Pearson,
Present.
Mr. Rollins,
Here.
Mr. Scrivano,
Here.
Mrs. McCulloch. Yeah, she's here.
She is?
She's muted, but. Mr. Siegel, Mr. Connor,
Here.
Ms. Stanford.
Here.
With 7 present, we have a quorum.
Thank you. We'll take a moment of silence to be followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Allegiance, flag, for which it stands,
one nation, under God, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I'd like to remind everyone about our mask required to wear masks through anyone in the building here, covering their mouth and nose, and that we share our mission of our district, and that's the mission of Rockford Public Schools, is to collaboratively engage all students in a first-class education for a changing world. I guess we'll do this now. Is Rod available? The back. Rod, would you step out? There he is. Okay. Y'all know that tonight is Rod's last night for a school board meeting. And Rod has been attending school boards for so many years, I can't even tell you how many. It's been a lot. But he has always been there for us, volunteering his time to help out with the broadcast of our board meetings, and always available when we need him. He's moving to Texas, and I also understand there's a marriage in your near future, so congratulations on that. We appreciate all of you've done, and we cannot thank you enough for your assistance, and wish you nothing but the best as you begin your new adventure in life. So thank you, Rod, from the board, and I think we should stand up. Okay.
Can I ask him how many years?
Go ahead, Mrs. McCulloch.
Hi, Rod. I feel like I've watched you grow up all these years. This is the oldest I've ever felt being on the board, I think, watching you move on and go and get married and get on with your life. And this community will be sore for your loss. So thank you for all your years. And I am asking you, how many years has it been? Because we saw you through high school, I think, right?
Years. Wow.
What did he say? 6 years. So 6 years of volunteer work every Tuesday night. Well, couple 3 a month. Then always at graduations we would see you. Thank you so very much. And sorry I can't be there, but I left a small card and a gift for you and your future bride. And Mrs. Laura, Mrs. Fromm will hand that to you, and it looks a little girly because there's a girl too, right? Okay. So best of luck to you, and you will be missed.
Thank you, Rod. All right. I hear they don't have snowstorms too often down there, okay? So, great, thank you. All right, Rod, great job. Jefferson Jayhawk grad. We are now on to the petitions and communications portion of our meeting, when we invite the public to make comments. The First Amendment of the United States Constitution guarantees the rights of citizens to petition their government, as well as provides freedom of speech. Also, the Illinois School Code requires that there be a time at regular and special meetings for public comment. Thus, we are following those mandates during the petitions and communications portion of our agenda. According to our board policy 2.230, the public comments portion of the meeting is limited to 30 minutes. The board will not respond to comments at this time. It is appropriate. If it is appropriate, you'll be contacted in a timely manner by staff in response to your questions. We do have a 2-minute limit and a clock on the wall to help you with your 2 minutes. We only have one speaker, but I'll just remind you that's not appropriate to address individual board members. or individual administrators or discuss matters that would otherwise be confidential in such open meetings. We thank you for your interest and your cooperation with our guidelines. Mr. Andrew Larson is here. And if you would come up to the podium and push the button to turn the microphone on, Andrew. Light up red. There we go. Okay. Yep.
Okay. So to start off, I'm the father of 3 kids in the Rockford district, and we've been very pleased thus far. We have 1 at Marshall and 2 at Guilford. And I've just been concerned with this new February 1st change, going from what was approximately 15 to 16 hours of schooling a week down to 15. You can check my math, it's probably a little off, but anyway. This plan goes into place February 1st, and I'm just a little worried because now, our rates are going down. This plan was made when it was higher rates. Just even today on the news, it was talking about several studies that came out that said that the CDC had found that the school system was not having the same problem that the high density populations were having, such as the nursing homes and other workplaces. The Journal of American Medical Association said that there has been little evidence that schools have contributed meaningfully to increased community transmission. And now the CDC has published a study out of Wisconsin that says, they looked at 17 rural K through 12 schools and found that 7 out of 191 COVID cases resulted from school transmission. So using some math, 7 out of 191 is approximately 1 out of every 26 cases. Out of 26, 1 out of 27. So you have a 27 times more likely chance of getting it out in the community than you do in the school. All right. The other thing is that the Las Vegas School District also just recorded that they had twice the number of teen suicides, which is very concerning. One of these involved a 12-year-old who searched for how to make a noose on an iPad issued by the school. They had something in place to try to find out, to contact the family. The family didn't get alerted to it, and the child was found dead the next morning. Again, I have a 12-year-old at Marshall, so this is concerning. Chicago is, they're looking at what to do with their school system. They were supposed to come up to a decision yesterday from the teachers union, but it happened that they are going to press that till tomorrow. The question is, Rockford Lutheran, Rockford Christian, Christian Life, Boylan, and Keith are all open every day, right? So my question is, what is their ethnic enrollment? What is RPS 205's ethnic enrollment? Are we underserving a certain part of your community? And I read your mission statement. This is the first time I've ever been to one of your meetings, but it does say the mission of Rockford Public Schools is to collaboratively engage all students in a first-class education for a changing world. Okay, so this is 1 year. We're going on 1 year of not having school, and I'm worried about the changing world. We have just taken a year out. My son's a junior. I have a sophomore as well. My son is in 5 AP classes. Should he even bother taking the AP test because he hasn't learned? He hasn't been taught those classes. He attends 2 days a week, and he attends and he attends and he attends. All right? So again, I am just trying to prove several things that show that maybe we should look at getting back in. I spoke to one of the principals. She said that there was no plan in place to revisit the February 1st plan, right? So that's, you've got like 4 more months, a little over 4 months of school. I think this should be revisited given the new evidence that's coming out.
Thank you for being here. Hear your input. I will ask now if there are any board member comments for tonight. Go.
Ken?
I'm going to let Mr. Siegel go ahead, then Jude after that.
Sounds good.
Thank you. I wanted to extend my condolences to the family of Margaret McCann, an 8th grader from Lincoln Middle School, and also extend my condolences to the Lincoln community on your loss. I'm deeply, deeply sorry.
Oh, look.
I'd like to, I actually would like an opportunity to speak to the change in schedule that we're going to be putting in place next week for our secondary schools. I'm excited that the students will be back in classrooms 3 days a week, that they'll be learning with the remote students at the same time. I'm excited that just tonight the board was told that in addition to the half hour per class, or the 25 minutes per class, there will be an additional hour of class in the afternoon, so that each of the classes has an extended period, which I know people are starving for. I'm also excited that this plan was developed with the teachers as well as the administrators as well as administration. So it was a collaborative effort for a place to re-engage. I hope as a board member that this is February and we're in school till June, that we do take a look at how this is working, and especially as the numbers continue to decline in positivity, also as more and more people get vaccinated. So as a board member, I am hoping that this isn't a stagnant situation we're in. We've been reacting and working on our feet to deal with all the changes that have happened over the past year. We've taken a lot of grief for that because people don't like a lot of change, but if there is an opportunity to bring more students back, I think people don't realize how difficult it is sometimes staffing because of the need for our staff to stay home, for example, when they are exposed to somebody who is positive. So we're dealing with it on a lot of fronts, but I think that it's an upward trend throughout the community and the state, and I too, as the gentleman who spoke, and I look forward to us reacting to that as we move forward. But I think first we got to get in there on Monday. Everything's in place. Everybody decided this is how we're going to start, and I think that extra hour each afternoon is going to put us over that 15-hour per week that was being suggested. I hope so, but I didn't add it up. I apologize. Thank you for letting me speak.
Other board member comments? If not, we'll move on to our superintendent's report. Dr. Jarrett.
I'd like to defer my superintendent's report to Mrs. Detman to update on our continued work on our accountability system. Mrs. Detman, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Choose the microphone that works here. So just a couple of verbal updates this week. You'll be hearing from us regularly as this work continues to progress. And as a reminder, at last meeting's Committee of the Whole, or this month's Committee of the Whole, we did a pretty deep dive into the standards of practice and the scorecard and how those two halves of the whole put schools on a 3, 4, or 5-year track. Our update tonight is more around our process of developing that work and getting some reciprocal feedback. So 2 important things to ground ourselves in are continuing to ask the questions, where can we learn the most about where our systems can become more equitable? We talked about our equity imperative and our equity challenge in our last update. And that's on our kind of standards of practice side. And on the standard of service, a driving question is, how can we better understand where some of our systems may be getting in the way of our equity imperative? So on the one half, we have our central office departments that have been coming together to kind of generate a short list of departments that will create standards of practice. So far, we have determined the school leadership team, SSAL, which stands for Student Support and Alternative Learning, curriculum, college and career readiness, early childhood, bilingual, special education, and educational technology. If you recall, our goal is around, a one-pager, a list of 10 or so items. And so we have a challenge before us to take that short list and keep refining within the scope of those 2 questions that I mentioned at the beginning. We centered our selection of these departments as a cross-functional rally cry team really around the idea of being relentless on a narrow set of items that we believe, if executed properly, will raise student achievement and advance our equity imperative in our district. And I used the word compliance. I went back and watched our meeting from last time, and I did use the word compliance as I was explaining this once, but I want us to push our thinking beyond compliance and into standards. What is the standard of care, really? There's comparable language in the health field. The standard of education that we expect in every school, that no one has to ask for, but is provided as a part of our high quality of service to the families in our community. We developed some workshop launch materials for each of those departments on the short list so they can start drafting their standards of practice, and we'll be bringing those back and forth through the Rally Cry team for feedback and revision over the next 6 weeks. We also stopped and asked ourselves, how can schools have a more active and participatory role in identifying the standards of service? And what questions are we really asking for them to think about? And that's really where we developed an activity really for every principal to have a voice, to ask, what are the standards of service that you need the central office to be relentless about in supporting you in your journey to increase student achievement and advance our equity imperative? So we'll have both the central office generating some standards of practice. We'll get feedback on those as well from principals, but we're also asking schools, what do you need most from the central office? And as those two ideas converge, we're going to find places where we overlap and we align, and we're going to find places where there's gaps. And I think in those gaps, if we really get serious about listening to each other and leaning into the question, how can we better understand where some of our systems may be getting in the way of our equity imperative? I think we're going to learn an awful lot, not just about the critical work of schools, but the critical work of the central office in supporting schools. So we're going to get very focused, very narrow, in really pushing on each other and questioning every standard of practice to ensure that what ends up on our list really is something that is a lever that we all need to be relentless about in our pursuit. And then finally, because of this is an awful lot of work here in the next 8 weeks. We've increased the cadence of our meetings. We'll be moving those to weekly meetings instead of bi-weekly, and we'll increase the pace of the in-between meeting work as well. So the big news here this week is the narrowed list of departments, the materials, and the process for gathering reciprocal feedback from schools, and kind of that back and forth iterating so that we can continue to listen and hear from each other and refine our thinking. Thank you.
Any questions or comments for Mrs. Detman? Okay. We'll move on to Performance Monitoring Committee. Ms. McCulloch, are there any follow-ups from the items that were covered at the Committee of the Whole?
No, we voted on the things that were covered. There is one new consent item that we'll be voting on tonight, which is the asbestos removal from McIntosh. Okay. That was necessary because we had we have some windows that need to be replaced. This is all part of the facilities plan from 2014, 2012. Anyways, they went through the full process. They had 8 bids between $51,920 and $83,000, and there was $52,000 budgeted. So the bid that they're going to accept that we'll be voting on is $51,920, and that includes the base and the alternatives. Other than that, nothing new from our committee.
Thank you. Now on to the Planning and Development Committee items. Mr. Rollins, any follow-up items?
There are no follow-up items, but I will warn you that starting at the next Committee of the Whole meeting, we're starting budget development.
Oh, boy.
And just my prep meeting with the staff was well over an hour, so I may be borrowing time from one of the other committees, the next Committee of the Whole meeting.
Look forward to that.
I owe ya.
All right. We'll move on then to the items presented at the Committee of the Whole. Any follow-up for internal, external stakeholders? Mr. Siegel.
There are no items for follow-up, but you may not touch 1 second of my time, Mr. Rollins.
Oh, okay, all right, okay. Now we're on to the Governance Committee, which is chaired by me. So I just wanted to give a heads up that one of the things that I'd like to get us to get in writing is all of our guidelines for our committees, So that will be coming up, I believe, next month, right, Mrs. Holder? So be thinking about those. I'm going to try to get some draft of some things and look at what was presented at our workshop that we spent. But example, there is a question right now. How often should we turn over the committee chairs? Originally we thought that should be annually, and I'm getting feedback that maybe we want to consider doing that every 2 years to give the liaison time to work with a board member that's chairing it or whatever. So that's a thought to be thinking about, or things like that. So I will put some things together, but if you have some thoughts, I'd love to hear them. So share those with me if you do. Other than that, move on to the consent items from the Performance Monitoring Committee are under 9. That's payroll, accounts payable, purchase orders, monthly cash and investment report through December, the financial results through December 2020, instruction bid pay request log, and as Mrs. McCulloch mentioned, the McIntosh School asbestos abatement project. And the following consent items from the Governance Committee include the meeting minutes of January 12, 2021, track purchase orders, the modification in the academic calendar, the workers' compensation settlement agreement for employee JP, and the Freedom of Information log. Is there a motion and a second to approve these consent items?
So moved.
By Mr. Connor, is there a second?
Second.
By Mr. Rollins. Are there any consent items that board members wish to have pulled for separate consideration? None. I'll have the coordinator then call the roll on the approval of the consent items.
Ms. Pearson? Mr. Rollins?
Yes.
Mr. Scrivano?
Yes.
Mrs. McCulloch?
Yes.
Mr. Siegel?
Yes.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Ms. Stanford?
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. We are now on to the closed session consent agenda items, including the following. The appointment of Sarah Craig as a 10-month elementary school assistant principal at Westview Elementary School, the HR organizational report and addendum, and the student discipline cases, of which there were 3 EIAs, expulsions and abeyance, for students 8206, student 8207, and student 8208. Is there a motion and a second to approve these closed session consent items?
So moved.
By Mr. Connor?
Second.
Second by Mr. Rollins. And are there any consent items, closed session consent items, that board members wish to have pulled for separate consideration? None. I'll have the coordinator then call the roll on the approval of the closed session consent items.
Mr. Rollins?
Yes.
Mr. Scrivano?
Yes.
Mrs. McCulloch?
Yes.
Mr. Siegel?
Yes.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Ms. Stanford?
Yes.
Ms. Pearson?
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
Okay, we are now on to board member action steps. We really just have the 2 that were mentioned, one by Mr. Rollins about, getting prepared for the beginning of the budget cycle process. This is a big organization, $460 million, something like that. Budget, so lots of those presentations will be starting for us. So a lot of homework for board members to work on, and as well as my request to send me your thoughts on anything that you'd like to see in our guidelines for our committees. So, any other items that needed to be mentioned?
Mr. Scrivano?
Mrs. McCulloch.
I would like to formally ask for and I'm not going to give a timeline on this, but the some sort of report on our therapy services and what the cost is for outside and what a comparative for what it would be if we were to bring that in-house. So I don't know if the timing for that is when we bring, somebody needs to remind me when we voted on the NIA contract, if it's better to look at it earlier so that we can make some decisions. So I know that we already have asked for information for the busing, to what that would cost to bring in-house, and we were looking to get that, I think it was in May-ish, so it would have to be after that. And then secondly, Mr. Rollins, Ms. Detman, we have to work really hard to be done quickly because I owe Mr. Rollins time from the last committee of the whole meeting.
Okay. So, Mr. Zediker, are you clear on that request then? I think the positions are SLPs, PTs, and OTs?
No, our SLPs are in-house or else private contract.
Are they? Okay.
It's just, it's OTPT.
So
We also are in-house sites.
All right. Okay, so that has been received by administration. So anything else for tonight's business? I'll take a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Or adjourns, moves to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Rollins. All in favor, say aye. Opposed, say
Aye.
sign. We are adjourned at 7:27.